Well, here we are in Savannah, Georgia, and it's my pleasure that I'm with my friend and fellow Vietnam veteran, Jerry White. Jerry, thank you, sir. It's an honor.
Thank you, Big John.
To be with you today. And
Same here.
I think I shared a little bit with you that the purpose of what we're doing here today is an oral history, not only of your time in Vietnam, but also a little bit about your life. And the reason I have determined that this is so important is because there's going to be generations of whites that are going to have access to this. We're going to try to get it funded so it'll be up on the internet for 100 years.
My goodness.
Now, you're familiar with Ancestry.com.
Right.
This is going to be an Ancestry.com in living color, you talking. Now just imagine to yourself if you could have went on the internet today and saw your dad or your grandpa. That's how powerful this is. So that's what we're doing as an oral history. So I'm just going to start this conversation by asking you, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Porterdale, Georgia, but I live in Covington, Georgia.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your folks.
Well, my dad was in World War II. He was with the 365th Engineers and was in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And he died. He's not with us now.
No, not in the war?
No, he
Okay.
died of cancer
I gotcha.
years ago.
Okay, how about mom?
She's still living. She's 96 years old.
Bless her heart. And where does she live?
She's in a nursing home.
Oh, okay. In Georgia?
Well, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And so, any siblings? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one sister,
And
13 years difference in our
And her
age.
name?
Lisa White.
Okay. And what is Lisa doing these days?
Lisa was a nurse, and then her husband passed away, and now she's remarried.
Okay. And does she have any children?
She has a son and a daughter.
And how about you? You've got kids?
Have a son and a daughter.
Okay, and their names?
Jeremy Lance White and Jamie Lynn White.
Okay. And what are those two up to?
Lance has a heating and air business, and he's doing very well. And my daughter, she's just a homemaker.
Okay. And you got to be proud of those kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, now you're married.
Correct.
And your lovely wife, what is her name?
Darlene White.
Okay. And what has she done? How many years have you been married?
Well, this is my second marriage.
Okay.
And we've been married for 23 years. And she's retired. She was a school teacher for 25 years.
Okay.
She's retired.
You and I have a lot in common.
Oh, really?
Yeah, except you were married, what, twice?
I was.
I was married 3 times, and I finally found the right one, and we've been married for 27 years.
Oh, good.
And that's Laura, of course.
Great.
That
Yes.
That you met at the
I
reunion.
have. She's a great girl.
So yeah, and anybody that'll listen and ask me, I always tell them she saved me. You know, she came into my life and got things straightened out. So that's good.
Well, my ex-wife had she made the statement one day. She said, "The second time around is better." I could not figure that out until sometime later, and honestly, I can agree. The second time is better.
Oh yes. And did you volunteer for the Army, or did you get drafted?
I was regular Army. I joined.
Okay.
Sure did.
And tell me where you were at in your life. I'm assuming you graduated from high school.
Correct.
And were you going to go to college, or what were you doing when you actually joined up?
Well, at that time, I had already said that I was going into the Army, and I had worked doing different things, and it was my intentions to go make it a career.
Okay. And did you have any preconceived notions about what you wanted to do for a job in the Army?
Well, at that time, either engineering or infantry.
Okay.
something in that.
And you know as well as I do.
I wasn't surprised.
How old were you?
19.
Okay, so same as me. We didn't know. I mean,
No, not
honestly,
really.
if somebody would have said infantry,
Fine.
well, that could have been a mechanic for all, for all we knew.
Right.
So, did the recruiter, because you went to the recruiting office,
I did.
did he say, well, we're going to try to get you a school, or we're going to try to, did he make any kind of reference to the fact that, did he ask you what you might want to do in the Army?
Well, it's been a while. It's just hard to recall.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
remember, to tell you the truth.
Okay, because sometimes they would do that.
They would.
To encourage guys to,
We went in on the buddy plan. I had a
Oh.
buddy, and we went in at the same time.
okay, what was that, his name?
Billy Williams.
Okay,
And we went in and went down to Fort Benning.
so is that where you did your basic?
That's correct.
Okay, and what did you feel like when did they bus you to Fort Benning?
They did.
Okay, what was your feeling when they opened the door and they told you guys to grab your stuff and get out of the bus?
What have I got myself into? Pretty much.
Can you just describe a little bit about what that was like?
Well, they opened the door and you didn't step out, you were jerked out.
Yeah.
And I, at that point, didn't know what I had gotten into.
Did they tell you to line up, or?
Eventually, we did.
Yeah.
And stood there and stood there and stood there. It was well up into the morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning before we opened.
Oh, man. So then the DIs, of course, were yelling at you, I'm assuming, and.
That's
and-
correct.
And then did they take you into a barracks where you slept the first night, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, describe to me, to the best of your recollection, what basic training was all about.
Well, I kind of enjoyed it. The only thing I really didn't like about it was I didn't get enough sleep.
Oh, yes.
I disliked it. It was just, I'd like to have had just a little more sleep.
No, that's a fact.
Oh, absolutely.
Remember when we got off on Sunday? That
Yeah.
was like that was the best day of the week, because nobody hassled you in the morning. You could.
Right.
But the problem was, is you were so used to getting up at 5 in the morning, it was hard to sleep.
That's right. Well, I still get up early. Not quite that early.
Yeah, it was hard to sleep in. So what kind of training did you get at Benning?
I went through basic training there at Fort Benning, and then afterwards there were certain ones that were singled out and issued. We had an M14, that's what we issued first, and then they did it again, and we got 16s, and then a few weeks later we were sort of pulled aside and went the course with the M16.
Okay, and so do you remember like the classes and?
I do.
And remember when you'd sit in the bleachers and
I do.
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one thing I do recall quite vividly was it was the good guy, bad guy. The good fella that done the work, didn't complain, and got the job done, versus the fella that was just a troublemaker.
A shammer?
Yes, yes. And that was, and I recall that the fella that was the good fella was Johnny Crawford, who was on the, who later was on the Rifleman.
Okay.
On
no,
TV.
oh, yes,
You
the
do
son,
remember
the
that?
son.
He was the good guy.
You were in basic with him?
No, but he was in the movie of the one.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
He played the part of the good fellow, where the bad guy screwed up
gotcha.
all the time.
Yep. And so, of course, you did basic rifle marksmanship.
Correct.
And how did you do when
Expert.
Oh, had you handled weapons before that?
Oh, sure.
So this was not your first?
No, my first rodeo.
Yeah, okay, good.
Used to deer hunt a lot.
Okay, yeah, and I was basically the same thing. My dad and I,
Right.
lived out in the country, and we did a lot of shooting and,
Sure.
and so forth. So it was, and we did same thing, M14
Mm-hmm.
to begin with.
Right.
And towards the end of basic, they said, well, I got to tell you guys, you aren't going to be using these things
No.
when when you get over to Vietnam.
Right.
And everybody kind of looked around and said, Vietnam?
Mm-hmm.
Did you just say when we get to Vietnam? And he goes, well, a lot of guys are going, then the guy thought he shouldn't have probably said that.
Right.
So you graduated from basic.
I did.
And at the last day, they set everybody around and they started calling out names.
Correct.
And giving you your MOS and where you would take AIT.
11 Bravo, and I went from there to Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Tigerland.
That's not what we called it.
Was there a Tigerland?
It was.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Tiger Ridge, or
It was.
they called it, yeah. Everybody that I've interviewed that took AIT at Polk said it was worse than hell. I mean, it was bad.
It was really bad.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. And they had the jungle set up
They
there,
had
right?
it, and it was surprisingly accurate. I mean, from what we trained with to what we got to in Vietnam, it was very accurate.
Yep. And
Well-
did you do a lot of maneuvering, and how to move on a village or go through a village? I mean,
They
since
did.
I didn't go there, what was
They
it
did.
like?
Well, it was like in World War II when you went from house to house, building to building. We went from hooch to hooch.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And you would go through villages going from each individual hooch to...
And they had guys in there, I'm assuming, in black pajamas.
They did.
And, that
They had both men and women.
to make it
They did.
realistic.
They did.
I forgot to ask you, when you joined the Army, were you married?
I was.
Okay. And how did your wife at that time take the fact that you were now leaving? And you didn't have any kids at that point, did you?
No, I didn't. I had already told her I was going to do this,
Okay.
so it was not a surprise.
Yeah. So and the reason I ask you that, there weren't that many married guys. A lot of engaged guys.
Right.
Believe it or not, there were a lot of guys that got engaged but just decided at the last minute,
Right.
maybe I'm not gonna
Mhm.
make it, type of thing. So AIT was pretty good experience.
Yeah.
And
Right.
do you feel like it prepared you for Vietnam once you got there?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember the platoon sergeant's name in basic?
No, I do not.
How about AIT?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Uh,
One of the things that was different about AIT that I remember when you'd go to the different places for instruction?
Yes.
In basic, they were like sergeants, like DIs, but in AIT, remember there were Vietnam vets?
They were.
And that was...
They were.
I don't know about your teachers or whatever, but ours did about 15 minutes of what they were supposed to read out of the book.
Right.
And then they started telling us, they took us on a trip to Realville.
Right.
And I look back on that.
Right.
I appreciate it because that was the first time that I realized there's something really going on.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy, can you imagine a grown man crying? This guy, and he broke down and he goes, I don't want any of you guys to get killed, because he'd gotten wounded real bad, and so when I saw him cry,
Right.
I thought, I'm going to pay attention to everything
Big time.
that these guys talk about, and
Right.
I really appreciated them. And then this isn't my interview, but just as kind of a funny full circle
Sure.
thing, when I got out of Vietnam, they sent me to Fort Campbell.
Fort Campbell.
And so I had 6 months to do,
Uh-huh.
and they said, well, you got 3 choices. You could go into the 82nd Airborne, the 65th Engineers, or you can go train basic trainees. And I said, well, I would never jump out of a perfectly good airplane. That's number one. Number two, I spent enough time with the engineers in Vietnam to know that all they do is go around and blow up booby traps and bunkers and stuff, and I'd had plenty of that, I'd gotten in on plenty of that.
Oh,
So I
guilty.
said, I'll just take I'll just take the other one.
Uh-huh.
So, and it turned out that I was the NCOIC in charge of a rifle range,
Okay.
an M16 range.
Mhm.
And so I had an E7, I was E5 at the time. The E7, actually, I was in charge, so I'd tell him what to do.
Right.
At the range, and then
Right.
we had a lieutenant that was actually the officer in charge, I guess.
Right.
So I'll never forget, when I started my classes, they gave you a
Mhm.
3-ring binder like that, and you were supposed to go page by page. I did about 15 minutes
Uh-huh.
and gave them exactly what they needed.
Right.
And then I started just like the Vietnam vets that taught me.
Right.
And they really appreciated that.
Oh, of course.
They really appreciated it.
You always appreciate the truth rather than
Oh.
being shammed.
Yep, yep. So when did you get to Vietnam?
Uh, in '69, I don't know the exact date. I think it was around July,
Okay.
June or July, somewhere in there.
And you went to Oakland, of course, to
I
begin
did.
with.
I was really impressed with Oakland. They had some really nice barracks.
Yeah, and a
And-
lot of guys there, weren't there?
They were.
I mean,
They were.
a ton of people.
That was a World War II installation, I believe.
Mhm. And then, do you remember, did you fly over on a commercial plane like a United, or did you get
I
stuck?
went on Flying Tigers Airlines.
Oh, okay, so you at least got on an airline,
I
not an Army transport
Ship,
plane?
no,
Okay.
no.
They were taking guys over in those, and
I
they
would-
had the old web seats,
Yeah,
and instead of having a stewardess come and give you, a nice ham and cheese sandwich or
Right,
whatever,
right.
they had an E1 airman, one on board that would come down and give paper bags, and there would be like a sandwich and a,
you talking like a C-130?
no, bigger than that. It was like one of their bigger transports.
Oh, okay.
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 And boy, guys that got stuck on that were really not happy
No.
campers.
I'll bet.
So what was your impression when you landed at Benoit and they opened that door? What do you
It
remember
stinks.
about that?
It really smelled bad. Hot,
Yeah, real hot.
real hot. I used to say that I thought it was 130 degrees in the shade. That's what I thought. I don't know. It could have been hotter than that.
What do
was
you think the
extremely hot.
humidity was?
It was
90%?
at least at the minimum.
Oh, yeah.
At the minimum.
It was miserable. So then they took you to Long Bend.
That is correct.
And I always called it a reception station. They it was probably processing station, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
How much time did you spend there?
I don't recall how long, but I went with a friend of mine. His name was Carlton Quick from Griffin, Georgia.
What about the buddy system?
It didn't work. We didn't go together.
What happened?
We parted ways at Fort Benning. I don't really know where he went, to be honest with you.
I mean,
He did wind up in Vietnam somewhere, but I don't know.
did it didn't work, or
It
you
fizzled. I don't have any idea.
Oh, wow. So that little program didn't.
It didn't in my case.
Yeah, yeah. And I've heard of guys that went over on the buddy system, and as soon as they graduated from
Didn't
AIT,
work.
that was it.
That's it.
They never saw each other again. So you know that you don't know where you're going yet. You're in Long Bend. They're telling you, okay, you have to show up at such and such time during the day, twice a day, and they're going to call names out, and they're going to tell you, they're going to give you your orders
Right.
on where to go. Tell me about that when you actually had your name called.
Well, the boy that was with me, Carlton Quick, was from Griffin, Georgia, and we thought we was going to the same place, but they separated us. He went to the 2nd 14th, which was the
White Warriors?
No, it was Golden Dragons.
Okay. Second and the 12th was the White.
2nd to 14th.
Yeah, the 2nd and the 12th were the White Warriors.
Didn't know them, but
Yep.
he went there, and I went to the Wolfhounds, 2nd 27th.
Okay, and I know this is gonna sound funny, but when the guy said you're going to 25th Infantry, the Wolfhounds, did you hear anybody say anything about the Wolfhounds, or did you know anything about them, or?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Knew nothing.
Okay, and so did you get on a deuce and a half?
No, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they flew me out by chopper and
Just-
dropped me off.
Just by yourself or some others too?
If I'm not mistaken, it was just me.
Okay.
I was a replacement,
Oh, yes, yeah.
without a doubt.
Okay, so they dropped you off at Charlie Company area.
That's correct.
What happened next?
Well, it was getting close to dark when I got there, and we just set up on the berm and waited. And
Now, I'm talking about in company area.
you talking about
haven't
in company area?
Okay, okay, yeah.
Okay,
But
all
you
right.
didn't have a weapon yet? You had?
No,
yeah,
in
okay,
company area, I did not.
okay.
And that first night,
Are you talking about the perimeter duty? The perimeter?
well, I slept in the company area the
Okay.
first night, seemed like. And they put me in a hooch down there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't smoke. And there was a bunch of guys in there smoking and drinking, and so I kind of went somewhere else
Yeah,
and
yeah.
slept. Them fellas was seriously, I didn't want to fool with them.
They were Wolfhounds?
They were. They were.
Probably guys that had come in from,
I had no idea.
I'm guessing.
I got a clue.
Yeah. So when you finally got your assignment, and I think you went to booby trap school.
Oh, I went to all that,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, and did all that.
Oh,
and you-
yeah.
And you got
Yeah.
issued a weapon and
Oh,
so
yes.
forth. Now it's the day that you're gonna go out to the field. Tell me about that.
Well, they put me on a chopper. There was nobody with me. I was the only one that trip. And they took me out and took me to a hard spot. And I want to say it was Kotrick
Mhm.
or Harris. It was,
It was one of the two, because those were the two that we were
okay.
in.
Well, when I got out there, I looked around and I looked and I just stood there and I thought, some fellow was standing there and he said, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's really not any different than the Westerns. The circling of the wagons,
Oh, yeah.
but this was a circling of the sandbags."
You bet.
So,
And the
it was just
concertina
humor.
wire.
And concertina wire. It was just a little humor, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
But
And you were told you were gonna be in the first platoon then, at that point?
that is correct.
Okay, so you must have, they probably said, go find
They did.
somebody.
They did, and I went over on the berm and I noticed there was a flamethrower laying on top of the berm. That's the first and the only one I ever
Oh,
saw.
wow.
I never saw anybody use it, but it just, you know, it looked like something out of World War II.
Mhm, mhm.
I don't know if it was used. I never saw anybody use it,
Mhm.
but that interested me at the time.
Yep. So who did you report to, or who was the first guy that actually interacted with you?
I don't know who the first one was, but there was a fella named Willie something from Kansas. And he was walking point at that time. And he said, "Come on, you're going to go with me."
This was your first outing? This was gonna be your first time out of the base?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's it. Real nice fella. Can't remember his last name. And so I followed him and done exactly, he said, "Do exactly what I do and be careful where you step."
Oh, yes.
He showed me all the ins and the outs, what to look for, where not to step and what not to do. And he was really good. I can't remember his last name, but he was from Kansas, I do remember that.
Who told you, besides him telling you to go out on point with him, were you assigned a job within the platoon? Like, were you a machine gunner
No.
or an ammo bearer or
No.
an M79 guy? Or,
No.
So you were a rifleman?
I was.
Oh, okay. And who do you remember the first week or so that was in the platoon that was in that particular outfit?
It's hard to call names. I remember Radlade.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sergeant Rock?
Yeah, Rock. And I remember I was there before him. And he came in and Radlade had just come from NCO school. And we went out on a patrol, and he carried a lot of stuff. And I told him, I said, I don't think you're going to want to tote that much. You're going to get tired.
It's gonna get hot.
It's real heavy. But he carried it anyway. And Estes.
Sergeant, was he a sergeant at the time or not?
He was.
Okay,
He
so,
was.
you know, that's all I ever heard him called,
Estes.
Sergeant Estes. I never heard anybody call him by his first name.
I didn't know it until until just recently.
No,
Willis.
Yeah.
I had no idea what his first
Yeah.
and if you'll remember, nobody called anybody by their first
Yep,
name. It was
yep.
always a last
Or a
name.
nickname.
Or a nickname.
Yep. So, tell me about the first couple of weeks. Did the guy take you out on point more than once?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you're,
I pretty much stayed on point. Yeah, I did.
okay, and,
I don't know if that was good or bad, but
I guess it's whatever a guy's comfortable with. We had guys in our platoon that wanted to walk point. I mean, they didn't,
I didn't mind it.
Yeah,
I mean, after he showed me the things to look for, I didn't have a real problem with it. I could see good. I could hear it. And I have said this before, and people don't believe it, but I could honestly smell the folk before I got there.
oh yes.
So I believe that the senses were heightened
Mm-hmm.
to some degree. I don't know.
Very much
I
so.
don't really quite understand it myself, but I honestly could smell them before I saw them.
Did you ever walk into an ambush?
No, but I went on the R&R, and I was gone on the R&R, and while I was gone, the fellow that took my place walked into a machine gun's nest, and all of them was killed, but there was very, very few of them left when I got back.
Oh, this is not good.
No, it wasn't good, but it just happened.
Yeah. And did you even think, gosh, that could have been me, or that was my spot, or that's where I would have been, or did things like that run through your mind?
Well, yes, but there was nothing you could do about it.
No, no.
There's nowhere to go. I mean, you can't take it back, and
Yep.
just go on. Do what you have
How
to
many
do.
guys do you think were killed or wounded during that action?
I think all of them in that particular case was killed, but I don't really know the number, how many there were, but Tim Pasta was in that, and some others, I can't remember the
You're
names.
not talking about Renegade Woods.
I don't recall because I was not there. See, I was in Hawaii on R&R at the time,
Okay, but that would have been
so I don't know.
you'd have been in Vietnam. Oh, you'd have been there for 6 months by then, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to back you up a little bit.
Okay.
When was the first time that you experienced a firefight?
I don't recall. It happened quite often.
Oh, yes.
Quite often.
And did you think that the platoon in and of itself reacted pretty good? Were they a good team? Did they get lined up? Did they shoot back like they were supposed to?
I always thought that the people behind me was watching my back,
Yes.
and I felt like that God was before me. I wasn't bulletproof, but
Yep. Do you remember the very first time one of the guys got killed when you were out there?
no, honestly, there was so many that got killed. I really don't remember the first one. Some of it, be honest with you, I just try not to think about that too
Oh, I know.
often.
No, I know. Sometimes though, the first things, the first experience, the first ambush patrol, it's just because it was the very first time you did it. That seems to be more vivid. People will remember those things a little bit more. Speaking of which, what was your first ambush patrol like?
Well, they kind of run together. I don't recall exactly the first one. Um, I really don't remember the first one.
Or any of them. You remember going out at night and?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about how you guys worked on that.
Well, many times when we were at Jackson, we would go down to the river down there, and we'd get on river boats or either the old World War II type that drops in the front.
LSTs.
LSTs.
Mm-hmm.
We went down, and they would carry us down. And generally speaking, there would be two ambushes. There would be one further down and one behind.
Okay.
So you'd catch them in the middle.
Okay.
And I remember one particular that we went down, and I was on the furthest one away. And we heard a lot of fire behind us. We didn't know what had happened, but they would always come and get the one that was the furthest away first, come back by and pick up the second one.
Mm.
And when we got back, we got out and they didn't answer. So they let us off the boat there. We went out and checked them out, they was all dead.
Oh my.
What had happened during the night, well, river boats came down through there and heard some noise and opened up on them, and it was.
Friendly fire?
It was.
Oh my.
I don't think it was anybody left.
I know one personally, Ralph Raber, he got shot by a riverboat with a 50 caliber, and
I don't think any of these boys lived.
Earl Herndon, he's at the reunion. Earl was next to Raber. This is probably a different day,
Okay.
but I'm just saying that happened.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
I mean, friendly fire, accidents, things like that. It just.
Well, I remember one particular time they had captured one of our radios, and I believe we were at Jackson, Firebase Jackson, and they were actually calling fire missions in on us.
Unbelievable.
Well, it was happening.
Wow. And you had no clue.
No.
Wow, that's terrible. What was the worst day that you spent in Vietnam?
The worst day?
Or night, just the worst time, I guess.
Well, there was a boy named Dennis Ferris. He's on the wall. And I don't recall the fire base we were at, but Dennis was sitting on some sandbags out there, and I noticed he crying. And I asked him what was wrong, and he said he got a Dear John.
Oh, yes.
And we started talking, and he turned around and said, "What would you do?" He had his insurance made out to his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat there for a few minutes. I said, "Well, I believe I'd go change that insurance." Be the first thing I'd do.
First thing, sure,
And-
sure.
And he did. He went immediately and changed the insurance. He come back, he was all tore up and bent out of shape. There was 2 helicopters coming in to unload. And they sat down, and I don't know the whole story, but they had evidently turned Claymore mines around and popped the Claymores on the 2 choppers. And Dennis, I told him, I said, "Why don't you go down there and help them unload those choppers?" Dennis was, I hesitate to say some of this, but he went down, he was killed.
Yeah.
And I always felt really, really, really bad about
Sure you
that.
did, sure. And incidences like
They
that,
did happen a lot.
they just happened,
They did.
you know.
Do you remember what the food was like?
Well, sea rations.
Did you eat any of the World War II ones?
Oh yeah,
Well,
they
that's
put
all,
up the
that's all
40s.
we had.
Did you ever get to eat at a mess hall, or did they just bring it up to you in hot pots, or?
Very rarely, but every once in a while they would come out and set up a tent and have a hot meal, which for me, I just soon eat the sea rations. for me.
Did you ever get a Thanksgiving or Christmas meal from them?
Well, I remember it was a Thanksgiving or Christmas one. I can't remember. But we were supposed to have turkey. I believe it must have been Thanksgiving, and we had sea rations. But now the next day we got it. You know, the turkey and dressing.
Did they ever bring out steaks or
No.
nothing
No.
like that?
You know, people ask that.
No.
We never got steaks.
Now the Marines, we talked to
Yeah.
some Marines, and they
In
all
the
the
real-
time they got steak dinners before a lot of their missions. I just didn't know.
Oh,
if
no.
you ever-
Yeah, that wasn't us.
Absolutely not.
What was a day like when you had to go stomping through the rice paddies?
Well, it was hard, and it was heavy, and it was hot, and it was miserable.
Did you ever run out of water?
I carried 3 canteens. Yeah, I did. To answer your question, I did.
Do you remember the iodine tablets that?
I did.
So if you were in a rice paddy all day long, you know the water was 90 degrees itself. It was like we were cooking.
It was hot water.
We were cooking. In
Yeah,
that
you
place.
were.
So dehydrate, water, and then you run out. We weren't still in the rice paddy. Did
Yeah,
you
I
ever,
did. Yeah, I did.
You know, and you're gonna die. You're so thirsty you're gonna die. So I read that bottle, and it said take a tablet and put in your canteen, fill it with water, shake it, and wait 1 hour.
I never done that.
Did
Well,
you ever put
yes,
the
I-
iodine tablet and then?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did too. And I just thought, hey, if I get a tapeworm, I guess I'm gonna get a tapeworm or whatever.
Well, I learned, actually, it's just a few weeks ago, a fellow was telling me, he was in the 25th, and he had gotten some kind of liver problem. And he said it was because of the iodine tablet.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, I'd never heard that one before.
That's the first I'd heard
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Did you ever have any experiences with leeches?
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about that. How did that?
Well, when you go into some of the canals, you would just be covered in them, and some guys would use cigarettes, and I'd use bug spray.
That's what
it
I-
was the best thing.
And they'd come off and.
They just drop off.
Yep, that's what I used too. But do you remember, I mean, it was discouraging. When you raised your pant leg and wasn't it just kind of demoralizing? I mean, it just made you feel like, oh man,
Yeah.
not again.
But it happened all the time.
We dealt with it all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So leeches were one thing. How about snakes?
Well, one time, and again, I tell this and folks don't believe it, so I quit telling it, but I was walking and I saw a big black thing across a berm, and I thought it was like ordnance that hadn't been exploded.
Oh yeah.
And I looked, and the thing moved. It was an anaconda,
Oh, a big python.
or whatever.
Oh man, yeah, of
the
course.
sucker was long as, I mean, it had a head on it this big. I mean, it was
Good
big.
night. So what did you do?
Oh, we just lined up and filled it with lead.
Yeah. They were some big snakes over there.
When it'd raise its head up, they'd always shoot it in the head.
Yep. You mentioned R&R.
Yes.
Where did you were there? Do you remember? Were you there about 6 months when you got that R&R?
I don't remember exactly how long, but I did go to Hawaii.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about that R&R.
Well, I met the wife at that time, and she was late coming in, or she came in early, I think. She was scared, and it was a mess.
I've never asked this question. You got to Hawaii
Yeah,
on the government ticket.
that's correct. She did too.
Did they pay for her ticket?
They sure
okay.
did.
I never thought about. I just thought about that right now.
They sure did.
Okay, so and then they paid for the room and. Not so much?
I don't know about that. No, I
So
don't think
you
so.
were on your own once you got there?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember anything about Hawaii that sticks out in your mind?
Well, let's see. I rented a little Toyota to tour the island.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we stopped at a little, kind of a stores, what would you call it? Shopping center like, but it was small.
Mm-hmm.
And it went up, it was an incline. When you parked at an incline. Well, I parked, got out, we went in, and the car rolled down.
Oh, no.
It rolled backwards and it came into the store.
What?
Oh.
What?
Yeah, I thought I was messed up. And the guy he was having a fit and cussing, and I was just kind of pissed off, and it almost come to blows, and the police got there, and the brake was on. It
So
wasn't like
it was a defect.
evidently because the brake was up,
Yep, yep.
and the policeman got there, and he got him off the side and got me off the side, and he said something to the effect, said, "How long you been here?" And I said, "Just today, first day, or second day, something like that." And he said, "Well, you don't have long, do you?" And the guy just kept cussing and cussing and carrying on. Anyway,
And he knew you were in the service?
he did.
Yeah.
The policeman,
Yeah.
who was really, really nice, and he told me, he said, "Let's get this thing out of here." I don't know if I got home, how we got back to the hotel, or I can't remember now, it's been so long, but I got out of it. He didn't charge me anything.
Yeah. What do you remember about some of the guys like Sergeant Estes? You carried ammo for him when...
Never. I never
What-
carried extra,
what was
just
he?
mine.
Was he was he a machine gunner?
Sergeant Estes?
Yeah.
No,
What job did he have?
platoon leader.
Oh, so he was leading the platoon.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What do you remember about him?
Well, let's see. He had a flat hat and he wore tortoiseshell glasses. And he was a nice guy. I really liked Estes.
Did he seem pretty savvy? I mean, was he pretty field savvy?
Pretty much so.
Like guys like Sergeant Rock, for instance? Did you?
I didn't have a lot of, I knew him, but we didn't interact.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And Tempesta, was he there when you were there?
Tim Pasta was there.
And Berg?
Berg was there.
What do you remember about Jim?
Jim, he's crazy. He was all right. He was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, did you have any of these guys that you kind of hung out or you bunkered with, or, you know, we all had our little groups, right? We were closer to certain guys and so forth. Do you remember who you might have been bunker mates with, or?
There was so many people that was getting killed. I didn't try to get real close to
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
It wasn't like buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, you were, but you weren't. If you
Yeah.
know what I mean. You kind of kept a little distance.
Well, and the longer you were there, the less you wanted to know about the new guys coming in.
That's right.
Because it was too much. If you got attached, and then they get killed or wounded and gone, that's tough.
I got in a card game one night and was winning pretty good. And another fella, a friend of mine, I can't remember his name. I had to go out on patrol, and I told him if he'd play it out, we would split it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did. We won. And then in the transition of me coming in, he went out. Well, I kept asking about him where he was at. He got killed. So
Oh gosh.
I learned early on gambling, nobody really wins. You
Yeah.
all lose in
Yep.
the end.
Yep. Were you wounded?
I was.
And tell me just a little bit about that. What was the circumstance?
Cuts and scrapes, little small shrapnel wounds. And then I think I had 10 days left, and I went in and done my paperwork. And they were so short in the field, they asked for volunteers to go back out. I went back out.
And so,
And it was a night defensive perimeter when we got overrun.
oh, man.
I had 10 days left. Up to that point, it was just, small shrapnel wounds and
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yep. And so then I guess after that, you went back in sooner than later. I guess you'd have to get back there, what, 3 days? At
Well, they
least?
dusted me off. I mean, I got wounded pretty seriously.
Oh,
at that point.
tell me about that a little bit. What kind of wounds did you get? Was it from a mortar or an RPG or?
RPG was part of it, and then I got in the shot in the back,
Oh,
shoulder.
okay. Was this perimeter you were in, did it have bunkers and wire? And they overrun the perimeter, or was it just you guys out there?
It was the bunkers and had wire, and we had OPs that were out
yes.
further. And I had gone out to check the OPs out in front, and I was on my way back, and that's when all hell broke loose.
Mhm.
And I heard the sound, you could hear it coming, and it was behind me. Well, there was nothing to do but get back to my foxhole where there was 3 other guys back there. And I made it back to the foxhole.
Mhm.
And then RPG went off across behind us, and they overrun us. It was massive. I mean, I don't know how many there were, but they were just like walls of them.
Oh my gosh. I know this is gonna sound odd, but did you think at any time this could be it? I mean,
Actually, I thought it was it.
you're hurt. I mean, you're already hurt. And I mean, I remember how this was. When you see these guys running by you,
Oh my God, they everywhere.
it is not, it's not a good place to be. So.
When you see all the fellas falling and they're coming over you, and it's just it's like nothing I've ever experienced.
Nothing, no. So then you got dusted off of there,
I did.
and they took you back to Coochie to the hospital?
Well, I didn't lose consciousness, I don't think. I remember them throwing me in the helicopter.
You do or don't?
I do.
Oh, okay.
I remember that the floor, the floor in the helicopter is like a little checks.
Yes,
like
of
thing.
course. Oh, yeah, sure.
It was so bloody. I don't know how in the world we stayed in the thing,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth. They just was just bodies in there.
Yeah,
And I was not the only one. There was a whole bunch. They just threw them in like cordwood,
yeah,
just trying to get us out.
yeah. And so then you went to the hospital, and you're already so short anyway. You would have been going home. So did you end up having to stay at the hospital?
Well, I was at the 12th of back, and I was laying up there all bandaged up and everything, and there was a boy that from my hometown. His name was Sammy Bowen. Came in there. How he knew, how he found out, I have not a clue.
Mm,
But he come in and he asked me. I didn't smoke. I never have been a smoker.
right.
But I chewed tobacco.
Oh, okay.
And he come in and said, Jerry says, is there anything that you want like that? I said, well, they won't let me chew tobacco. And I said, if I had some chewing gum or bubble gum or something, this might drive me nuts in here like this. And he went down to the PX, and I saw him, some years later, I talked to him. He said he come back down with 2 bags of stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And he went to the bed and I was gone. And he asked where I was at, and they said that they'd already shipped me out.
Yep. And so you were going home in a way, sort of. You're
Well,
you're getting out of Vietnam, right?
Well, you remember they gave you a choice. Do you want to go here, here, or here? And you maybe could get that.
I mean, but did they send you to Japan for your injuries?
Well, when I went in and done my paperwork, I was supposed to go to Fort Riley, Kansas.
Okay.
But when I got wounded,
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay.
so when I got wounded, it all changed. And I went to the 12th of Vac, then from the 12th of Vac I went to Guam,
Oh, okay.
and I was in Guam for some time. Time sort of.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
loses.
yeah.
And I laid there, and there was a fellow next to me, kept asking what was wrong. He was a little older than me at that time, not a lot, a little older. And he kept asking me what was wrong, what was wrong, what was wrong. We didn't want to talk. And finally, about the third or fourth day, something like that, I said, well, you've been asking me what's wrong with me, what's wrong with you? And he said, son, said, I can show you. And he reached down and he pulled the sheet back. And the belt line, there was nothing below the belt line.
Oh, buddy.
And I was feeling pretty bad at the time.
Oh, buddy.
But when I saw that, and he looked at me, he said, said, I had a wife and 2 boys when I came. That I don't know if I'll have a wife when I get back. And it just tore me up.
Oh, man, that would just be awful.
Well, I've always said he's the biggest man I've ever met in my life.
Golly, that would just be awful.
I don't know what his name was. I don't know where he was from. But he was a real inspiration to me.
Oh, my, I should say. When you finally got home, did you have any time left to serve?
Well,
like
I
a
didn't
year-
come home. I stayed in Portsmouth. After I left from Guam, they sent me somewhere. Then I wound up in Portsmouth, Virginia Naval Hospital.
Okay.
And I stayed up there right at a year.
So you had a 3-year commitment, am I correct on that?
Yes.
When you joined. So with all your year in Nam and all this other stuff, did you just about do your 3-year time?
Well, they retired me.
Medically retired?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess they really just put me out to pasture
Well,
because I shot up a little
and
bit.
so many guys, that happened to a
Yeah.
lot of guys.
It did.
So what career, when you finally got medically put out, what career did you pursue?
Well, I came home and I went to school. After I
Did the Army pay for that?
They did.
Okay.
They did.
What kind of a trade or what?
I took heating and air conditioning
Oh, yeah, okay.
and graduated out of that, or finished that. And
So did you work in that trade?
some, I did.
Okay, that's
I
a
did.
that's a good trade.
I did. Well, my son has a heating and air
Well,
business now.
yeah, yeah.
Which I'm very thankful for. I think he got into a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to college for a while, and I dropped out of that.
Mhm.
I just done various things, and
When you came home,
Mhm.
you're medically retired, you're working in the HVAC business. Did you ever try to get in touch with any of the guys you served with in Nam?
there was a fellow named John Justice that I remember, and I had his name and number, and I called him, and he lived in Texas, and Mr. Justice answered, and I asked him, I said, is this John Justice? And he said, John, yes it is. I said, is this the John Justice that was in Vietnam in 69, 70? He said, that was his son.
Oh, okay.
And he said, what do you want to talk to him for? And I said, well, I knew John well, and I just wanted to speak to him. And I heard the man crying over the phone, and I knew something was wrong.
Oh, boy.
And he finally, I guess, composed himself and told me that his son had committed suicide. Said he wished I had called about a month or so earlier.
Oh, my.
And I did too. I wished I'd have called someone, but I didn't.
Is there anything that I haven't talked about in your service in Vietnam that's important to put on this interview? Any significant names or anybody, or, because I don't want to leave out anything if, you know, if there's something important.
Well, I hope that the coming generations will feel the necessity that the prior generations have felt to protect and defend this country. It is worth protecting and
Yes.
defending. It really is. And we have it's not easy. It's very difficult, but I don't believe I would change a thing.
What is your definition of a hero?
You know, I've never thought of that. Someone that does something that maybe they don't want to do, but there's a necessity in doing,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter the cost, they'll do it.
Okay. And what does the American flag mean to you?
I wouldn't advise you burning one in front of me. There's a lot of blood that's been shed for that
Yes.
flag, and it makes me mad to see other people take what is so precious and try to tear down and destroy it. We've got a lot of evil in this country, and
Yes.
it's just wrong. These people just don't understand, I
Do you
guess.
think there's an effort to tear our American flag down and
I absolutely
replace
do.
it with something else?
I do. And I'm very sorry for that.
Mhm.
It's really a heartbreaking thing to
Yes,
see
it is.
people stepping on our. You go back to the 1700s and the ones that started this country, that fought and died for this country, go down through the generations. There's just been so much given.
Yes.
So many young lives. It's been just. I don't want to see it taken in vain. I
Yes.
don't like that.
Yep, I agree. Your wife is sitting right over there.
Yes.
One of my last questions is what has your wife meant to you?
Well, I love her very much. She's very kind and very helpful. I don't think there's anything I'd do that she would get out there and help me with if
Mhm.
it need be. And I'm a very blessed and very happy individual. God has been very good to me, and I'm very thankful.
Amen to that. And final question. At the very beginning, I told you that this interview is probably going to be seen by several generations of your offspring, and we're going to be long gone when these kids are going to be being born,
Really.
and they're going to have access to seeing this.
Mhm.
What is your very best advice to them? Just look right into that camera right there and give them your very best advice.
Well, I would say to believe in God first. I've got a little sign at home that says God, family, community, and country. And I believe those are the steps that it's
Mhm.
in. If it doesn't begin at home, it won't permeate out. So if this country stands, it's going to take their effort.
Yep.
And, but I'm a firm believer in God Almighty. I would not be sitting here today if it was not for that.
I believe it.
I had one of, I guess, a lot of this stuff you don't like to talk about, but I had one of the experiences that a lot of people don't like to talk about, and I am absolutely certain that God left me here for a reason,
Yes.
for a purpose,
I believe it.
and I don't believe we're going to die until that purpose is fulfilled.
Yes.
So we wait for that day.
Yeah. Well, bless your heart that you recognize that, right? I mean,
Yes.
you have to, a guy has to be open and
Sure.
recognize that before he can actually fulfill or make that happen.
Sure.
So I just, and you know, you're a good man.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, you're a good man.
I
And
try.
I just want you to do one last thing.
What is that?
There's a great grandbaby that's gonna be watching this. I
Yeah.
just want you to look into the camera and it's gonna be a little girl. I want you to tell her how much you love her.
I do. I love all the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and everything afterwards. And may God bless us all and keep us.
My friend, thank you again
Thank you,
for
Big
allowing
John.
me to spend this time with you and thank you for coming and this just means so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Oh, he does.
Without
more-
a doubt.
More than I deserve.
Without a doubt.
So, well, thank you so much.